Please be seated. Proceedings are resumed. Recognize honorable member from the District of Northside continuing his debate.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I know that the government doesn't normally pay a lot of attention to what I say, but it certainly is disappointing to see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of 7 seats empty when the House is called and we're debating their law. But be that as it may, when we took the break, Madam Speaker, I was talking about the progression of the 1969 legal practitioners law to the law we have today. And Madam Speaker, I also asked the staff to look up for each of those amendments that was brought. And it's very interesting that the progress that was made and the changes that were made. And it's also interesting, and I think since we're departing so far from what our forefathers envisaged the legal profession would ever be in this country with this bill, I think it is probably good to record for posterity who were the actual attorneys as listed in the first schedule of the 1969 law. And I quote, Madam Speaker, the first schedule, number 1, Carl R. Brandon; 2, Bruce David Campbell; 3, Arthur Berkeley Hunter; 4, John Craddock Maples; 5, William Stewart Walker; 6, Ronald McIntosh; 7, Peter Hilton. Then, Madam Speaker, in 1972, they introduced the legal practice certificate. And it's also interesting to know, to read from the 4th schedule of the Legal Practitioners Amendment Law 1972. It's practice and certificate. It is hereby certified that blank, that's where the name of the person would go, Esquire, an attorney at law of the Grand Court of the Cayman Islands, having complied with the provisions of subsection 1 of section 12A of the Legal Practitioners Law 1969, is entitled to practice generally in the islands as an attorney at law until the 31st day of December, year blank, upon the terms and subject to the conditions set forth in the aforesaid law. I was saying anything about practicing anywhere else but Cayman. Then we had other amendments, Madam Speaker, as I have 69, 80, 81. And you know what's interesting about all of these amendments, Madam Speaker, is that they were all moved by the Attorney General at the time and not by any elected member of the House. So it leaves me to wonder why this bill is not being moved by the Attorney General, who I believe has constitutional responsibility for it. I think he's quite capable. I would also think that he would also be willing. I would also think that he is able. So the question is, why? Is it because the bill is not really about the standards in the profession, but it is more about the business side of the financial services industry, and that is why it has fallen under the Minister of Financial Services and not the Attorney General? But, Madam Speaker, I'm sure that the Attorney General will speak and explain why he was not allowed to move the bill and fulfill his, what I believe are his constitutional responsibilities and requirements. Now, Madam Speaker, are you suggesting that the governor revoked his responsibilities for legal affairs and the legal fraternity? That's the conclusion I would draw from that, Mr. Premier. Oh, okay. We know that's not you. Anyway, Madam Speaker, let me move on. Besides the Madam Speaker, as I said earlier, I have serious concerns about the issuing of practice certificates to non-Caymanians resident in other countries. I still wonder how we're going to have any jurisdictional control from the Chief Justice in that environment. Are we, because I can't find in the law where it says that these non-resident Caymanian practicing attorneys have to register with the legal authorities in there and be disciplined there or get permission from them to practice Cayman law. I don't know how it's going to work. I would think that if they're going to be practicing Cayman law in another jurisdiction, there must be some requirement to register or interact with the legal supervising authority in that country, whatever that happens to be. But I don't see anything in here that makes that a requirement for them to do and therefore make them directly subject to that authority for disciplinary procedures and making sure that they're following the voluntary code. But, Madam Speaker, the thing that troubles me most of all is the makeup of the Cayman Islands Legal Practitioners Association. And, Madam Speaker, on page 34 of the bill, under clause 13, general responsibilities of the council, and the previous part 3 talks about the council of the association, and all members, I believe, who are licensed as attorneys can be members of this association. But what troubles me is the makeup of the council. But in addition to that, in clause 13, it says it is the function of the council to manage the association's affairs. And 2 says, in particular, the council shall, on behalf of the association, support and protect the character, status, and interests of the legal profession, support the judiciary in upholding the rule of law and administration of justice, maintain and protect the independence of the legal profession and the defense of the profession in its relations with the executive of the Cayman Islands government and the judiciary. D, encourage legal education and promotion of the study of jurisprudence. E, promote the qualification, training, and development of Caymanians as attorney at law. F, determine questions relating to etiquette and the professional conduct of attorneys and the conduct of law companies. G, support public rights of access to the courts and the right of representation by attorneys before courts and tribunals. H, encourage improvement in the administration of justice. I, encourage the provision of law reports. J, encourage and support law reform, and K, further good relations between members of the association and lawyers of other jurisdictions and between the associations and other similar associations in other jurisdictions. My concern with the council doing all of that on behalf of the association as opposed to on the approval of the association or in consultation with the association, I don't see any requirement of this council to reference back to the membership and the association for anything that it establishes on its behalf in all these areas of its responsibility. And I would think that if we're talking about an association of attorneys doing all of these things, there should be some requirement that the framework of how they're going to achieve all of these things has to have some reference back to the membership for approval by the association. But I don't see where that is a requirement, and I would certainly recommend that that be one of the things that we look at in making that, because in any of this stuff, this council could go off and develop a criteria that the majority of the members of the association might not accept or agree with. But there's no requirement for them to get approval of that criteria from the members of the association. And that is particularly troubling when I look at the makeup of the council. And Madam Speaker, the thing that bothers me about this is we limit the number of Caymanians who can be on the board. Why is it necessary to mention Cayman in this anyway? It should be a given. They should all be Caymanians. It says at least 5 members of the council shall be Caymanian, of whom at least 3 shall have qualified locally. Well, if you don't intend for the other 3 to have the possibility to be something other than Caymanians, what do you need it for? Why do you need it if you don't intend that at least 3 people can be something else except Caymanian? Then it should simply say, all members, yes, I want them all to be Cayman. This is Cayman. This is not UK. This is not Scotland. This is not Russia. This is not anywhere else. Why are we ashamed to say that something must be Caymanians and controlled and handled by Caymanians? That's who sent me here. That's who I represent. We are always apologizing and looking for other things other than say, listen, I'm sorry. Tell them what the Australian Prime Minister told the Muslims. If you're coming here to live, you're going to accept how we live. But, so Madam Speaker, I can't accept that we need to provide for at least 3 of these 8 people to be from somewhere else. Because, Madam Speaker, now we have to realize now, that legally, all of those who we gave Cayman, all those partners that we gave Cayman status to, are Caymanian. I agree, they're Caymanian. So why do we need, are we saying that the managing partners and other important lawyers, attorneys that are in Cayman and Caymanians are not good enough? Somehow we need to provide for 3 people from somewhere else. Why? Now, Madam Speaker, again now, this council is totally made up of practicing attorneys. We're putting the fox in the hen house, and we expect to find chickens the next morning. Contrast that now, Madam Speaker, to the Bar Council that was recommended in 2013. that was rejected. The legal profession is to be the subject of greater accountability than its members have been in the past. We don't agree with that. Council members, this is the revised option A and revised option B, to have a bar council to address the regulation of the profession by the establishment of an independent regulatory body. If it is taken entirely from the membership of practicing attorneys, how can it possibly be independent? Because, Madam Speaker, we have to understand what we're dealing with now. We're dealing with people whose job it is to dart close to the law, circumvent the law, reinterpret the law, and find somebody else who will reinterpret it that way to win in court. There is no black and white. There is how you interpret it and how I interpret it. And if that interpretation is not good enough, you just pay more money to get another interpretation by one them they call Silk QC. Right? They just cost you more money. So, you believe that if they'll circumvent the law for me, they're not going to circumvent the law for themselves? That's not human nature. So, Madam Speaker, I would prefer to see this council, by whatever name you want to call it, not made up entirely of practicing attorneys. And what was recommended before was council members will include the Chief Justice or his appointee as chairman, the Honorable Attorney General or his appointee as deputy chairman, the Director of Public Prosecutions, 3 persons appointed by the Chief Justice, the Honorable Attorney General, and the Director of Public Prosecutions, that's 1 each, respectively, a cabinet appointee and the Director of the Truman Borden Law School or his appointee. People who are not out there practicing daily in the financial industry and members of the association. And that brings me, Madam Speaker, to this point. We hear that the Cayman Bar Association, the only thing the minister moving the bill mentioned yesterday was Cayman Bar Association. He mentioned the Law Society in his final paragraph one time. Everything else was Cayman Bar Association, Cayman Bar Association, Cayman Bar Association. I understand the politics of that. But, Madam Speaker, I want to read from a letter that the 5th elected member from Georgetown already tabled, Cayman Bar Association, to Bruce Smith, Acting Chief Immigration Officer, Department of Immigration, Elgin Avenue, Georgetown, 20th of June, 2013. Legal Services, 2015, sorry. Legal Services and Immigration-related matters. The Cayman Bar Association is charged in substantial part with seeking to protect the interests of Caymanians with the legal profession of the Cayman Islands. One role may in many respects overlap and be consistent with similar overarching elements of the Cayman Islands immigration regime, which in part seeks to ensure that local businesses and individuals are provided with due and appropriate protection from unfettered outside competition. Accordingly, we would like to bring the following matters to your attention. Self-employed work permit for lawyers. Our council has received indications of concern to the effect that persons who are not Caymanian and who accordingly have no entitlement to be self-employed may be being granted self-employed work permits or are otherwise engaged in competition and established firms and lawyers. It is suggested that some of these persons may not be truly legal and ordinarily resident in the islands. Others may be presenting themselves as practitioners of the laws of England and Wales and yet not in possession of an appropriate trade and business license. I would have thought that the chairman of the Bar Association, would know that lawyers don't require trade and business license. We exempted them that a long time ago. That was one of the first amendments they made. They changed that in legal practice law as soon as Benson Ebanks brought in those three pieces of legislation in West Bay Town Hall in 1971. Caymanian Protection Law, Trade and Business License Law, and the LCCL law. They quick a clock went and got themselves exempted from it because they were regulated by the Legal Practitioners Bill. Law. As part of the immigration regime, there is understood to be a general requirement that non-Caymanians not engage in gainful occupation in these islands without being duly authorized by a work permit or other suitable permission, such as a residence and employment rights certificate or expressed exemption. As a general rule, every employee should have an employer, although in limited exceptional circumstances, it is possible for an employee to be self-employed. However, there are particular restrictions on this, including especially in relation to professional persons. In particular, Section 4 to 6 of the immigration law provides that in consideration and application for a work permit for a professional employee, the Work Permit Board, the Business Staffing Plan Board, or the Chief Immigration Officer shall not accept, in exceptional circumstances, grant a work permit to a person wishing to enter into self-employment as a professional employee. From the point of view of the public and professional needs or benefits, the Council presently sees no exceptional circumstances justifying a grant. They also write about practice of foreign law in the Cayman Islands. We recognize the need and appropriateness of having skilled expertise readily available within our own jurisdiction, and in fact embrace the prospect of duly regulated practitioners of foreign laws being able to use the Cayman Islands as a base from which to operate. This, however, ought not to be to the detriment of the many established practitioners, both Caymanian and expatriate, who operate in full compliance with the existing regime and may now be facing inappropriate competition from persons who are not Caymanian. And man, think about it, I wonder what has happened to all these concerns. But I know why. In the notes that the fifth elected member from Borden Town, fifth elected member from Georgetown, I'm sorry, Madam Speaker.
Honorable member, you have 1 hour remaining.
Okay, Madam Speaker, that's more than enough time. A note that was recorded on the meeting that was referred to by the Premier and may also have been by the Minister of Financial Services that took place a couple of nights ago till that ungodly hour of 10 o'clock. Present at the meeting were Minister Wayne Panton, Alice Dear Robertson, President CILS, Abraham Topole, Topple, President of CBA, Rohan Small as facilitator, MLA Winston Connolly, Chief Justice Anthony Smelly as facilitator. And Madam Speaker, the President of the CPA had his boss there, CBA. President of the CBA is an employee of the President of the CILS. We having to wonder why they gone quiet. Because I can promise you, if he stepped out of line, he not likely to be invited back to work Monday morning. I mean, that's just a fact from other people. We had a letter from one this morning, you know. So, Madam Speaker, you need to draw the attention of the Minister of Financial Services to stand in order 34, please. I don't really appreciate being interrupted. I didn't
Third or
interrupt
four,
you.
39-3. See?
Third or fourth. There's only three reasons how he can interrupt me. One of them, a point of order, point of installation.
39C says maintain silence while other members are speaking and not interrupt except in accordance with standing orders.
That's the one. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
And that's drawn to attention to all members.
Yes, and you know, because, Madam Speaker, I'm trying to put his interruptions in proper perspective. You know, this is like the Indian national who went into Harrods and said, I would like to buy a top hat and a bow tie. And the guy said, where did you learn English? He said, BBC shortwave. He thought the static was part of the language. His static is not part of this debate. I just dreamed that up. Now, Madam Speaker, on several occasions, reference has been made that this council is similar to the council in the council law that we passed a couple of months ago. But that's not so. It is true that, like the lawyers, the accountants have a certain amount of self-regulation authority under their law. But they are further governed by international associations and organizations that we don't have the comfort of having these lawyers covered by. They're only covered by this law. They don't have any international associations which are worldwide with standards that they have to comply with. So it is substantially different from the accountants. Because, Madam Speaker, as I pointed out earlier, there is nowhere in the legislation that even requires that 8-member council, with all the things that it does on behalf of all of the, what it would be, 700 members, thereabout, to come back and seek approval or permission therefrom. And that gives me great concern. Because, as I said, Madam Speaker, the skills of lawyers is maneuvering around law and legal interpretations and finding stories in books that relate to the same scenario and using that as case history and precedents. And, you know, you can be a good lawyer once you can remember what page the book of story is. Now, Madam Speaker, the other thing that concerns me is the exemptions to the Attorney General and his staff. I really don't understand that one. I mean, I know we often say that laws that are perfect, totally applicable and enforceable on the people we represent should not apply to government. I've never subscribed to that thing. I think all laws in this country is good enough for the people. It should be good enough for the government to comply itself with. So, Madam Speaker, I have some serious concerns about the exemptions in here for the Attorney General and his staff. I think all of his staff is included as well. They don't need to present themselves to the court and be issued practicing certificates. The Attorney General, the way I read it, he can basically do that himself. And that's all fine and good, as long as we have a good Attorney General. But we have records in this House of some of them that, shall I say, were not quite so good in the scale of justice. So, Madam Speaker, I think that anybody working in the Attorney General. Oh, it's in, oh, I got it. Okay, it's Practicing Certificates 49. An attorney at law shall not practice Cayman Islands law, whether in the islands or in other jurisdiction, if the attorney does not have a practicing certificate that authorizes the attorney to practice Cayman Islands law. 2, a government attorney is deemed to be the holder of a practicing certificate authorizing the attorney to practice Cayman Islands law on behalf of the government. A certificate signed by the Attorney General to the effect that a particular person is a government attorney is evidence of that fact. And Madam Speaker, we just had a case before the court where the individual claimed to have had certain qualifications and didn't have it. Although the court case was not about the qualifications, it was about other. We all remember the wonderful economist that we had here for a number of years, whose doctorate was in divinity, not economics. As a huge civil servant. Never forget the students graduating at the high school clapping the Honorable Financial Secretary off the stage for reading the speech he had written for him. So there is precedent that people can sneak in here promoting to have certain certificates. So we need to put in here, I believe, something that attorneys, some requirement that people that the Attorney General certify should have. I don't think we can just accept that we will always have a good Attorney General and that it would follow in line. I think he should have to have the same things that any other practicing attorney has in the country. Huh? Yeah, that was, he was here from, right, but he was here from like 86 or 87. He was here for quite a while. Yeah, but he didn't find the last thing left. Well, I'll plead the fifth. Madam Speaker, why does the government feel it is necessary? We were told by the Attorney General in legal advice to the Parliament, the Legislative Assembly, quite recently, that it is not necessary to rewrite existing law into new legislation because it should be abided by that law anyway. So why are we complicating this that is supposed to be for improving the profession by putting in the requirements of the business staffing plan? What business does it have in legislation that is purported to raise the standards of lawyers? Is it because we believe that the complaints of some people are legitimate and that somehow these attorneys have not accepted and followed the spirit of the immigration law on business staffing plans? And we believe that if we put it in this piece of legislation, they're going to pay no more mind to it? I would suggest that this will give them more room to ignore it, because they're in charge of this legislation under their council. So, again, I would ask the Attorney General to clarify for me. I'm not a lawyer. But which piece of business staffing legislation takes priority? If the council decides that it is not going to enforce the business staffing sections of this bill, do we still have the authority under the immigration legislation to say that they must give scholarships for so many people, they must have so many Caymanians for so many other attorneys? Because, you know, Madam Speaker, It's either that the people accept the requirements of a law and they agree to abide by it. Repeating the same legislation in purpose-specific legislation for a particular professional group, I think says something really awful about the profession itself. In that we feel, or the government feels, because I don't feel, I'm not supporting the bill. That's one of the things that I wanted in the bill, if I can support it. That if we put it in here, suddenly a light bulb is going to go off, and because it's in to a law for legal practitioners, they're going to subscribe to all the provisions thereof. The fourth elected man from Bordentown showed me an ad this morning from a law firm for scholarships, Cayman status only. Now you understand what that says, huh? For the average Caymanian. That says that a Caymanian can't apply. Only persons with Cayman status can apply. Now we accept them as being Caymanian because they got Cayman status. They don't accept that we are equal to them because we Caymanian and they got Cayman status, you know. Because you all will remember where the term expat came from. Remember that was a elitist word, remember? There was a little town up there on South Church Street, right, that we natives couldn't go unless we were called for some pleasurable purposes. And we have turned that round over the years to where expat is a derogatory word. But you ask any of them that got Cayman status where they're from, I will bet you not 5 out of 10 that say Cayman. One of them called me on the radio a couple of weeks ago. He had 2 questions to ask me. Similar. Have you ever said anything good about an expatriate? And do you have a UK passport? I answered him. I said, I've been married to two expatriates. You heard me say anything bad about it one day? And I said, I don't have a UK passport. Oh, he was disappointed. He almost swallowed the phone he was talking. You could hear when it went down. So I said, well, I don't have time to explain to you today why I don't want, care, or desire a UK passport. But I have a few questions I would like to ask you. If you would come with me and have a cup of coffee, here's my number, call me. Call me since. And they had just introduced this new thing at Radio Cayman to get revenue for the government, where they got to cut you off in the middle sentence to put on an ad. So I didn't get to ask him if he had brought up his UK passport when he got his Cayman passport. But that's the question I really wanted to ask him. Because they don't give up nothing. Every one of them keep their alternative. And when they destroy our industry, they're gone. They're gone. Remember I-1? Remember the airport for I-1? Wasn't too many Caymans leaving there now. They were leaving car, truck, watch, phone, everything behind, getting out of town. I had my way. You want Cayman status, you give up the one you had. But anyway, that's by the by. So, Madam Speaker, I really don't see the necessity or what we are going to gain by putting into this bill a repeat of the immigration requirements. Not in this case, because the pants can drop off anyway. And Madam Speaker, you know, I know of too many instances where Caymanians come to me, tell me. We all know that part of the requirement of the business staffing plan, and I don't remember the exact number, so I won't try to quote it. And anybody with a business staffing plan is supposed to provide a scholarship for X number of work permits. Tell a Cayman and go apply, try get one. Just can't get in the door. When I talk to young people, Madam Speaker, unfortunately, not on the legal field. We leave this country, we go to another man's country, we compete for an education. We compete amongst their best. We excel above their best. In the final year of college, those young people who are not as smart, not getting as good grades as us Caymanians, are headhunted by corporations. These Caymanians come back here. They go to these various forms. They put their certificates on the thing, looking for a job. They treat them like a thief, a criminal. You don't have no jobs. They got 500 work permits. And remember, I brought a motion here some years ago. It said, I believe it would be good if we made business staffing plans a public document so that that Caymanian could go into a law firm after finishing law school, getting his articles and all the other stuff, and say, I would like a job. We don't have any. Well, can I see a business staffing plan? Look at this business staffing plan and say, well, here is Joe Blow. His work permit is up in 3 months, 6 months. And I didn't recommend that the salaries bands, which is not part of the business staffing plan anyway, but his credentials should be there. So he can look at it and say, well, he's got a CPA or an LLB. I got an LLB. Well, he has 5 years experience, but he doesn't have maybe Microsoft Suite. So let me go and get that, and I'll come back in 3 months and apply for his job. But they're simply told there's no jobs, and 9 times out of 10, they put the application in the wastebasket. And Madam Speaker, I've said on the Force Assembly before, there's a revolution brewing in this country. We have an obligation to stop it. This bill no to stop it. This bill, in my view, is going to make it worse. Read the letters you got from I feel like I remember from Georgetown. Talk to the people behind the coconut tree, because they can't come and talk in public, you know. They have to meet with you secretly. That fear that we are allowing non-Caymanians and new Caymanians to exercise on our people when we welcome them to our shore and allow them to be part of our economic miracle, and in most instances, to get more out of the economic miracle than the Caymanians. There was a time in this country when Caymanians owned everything. We own nothing today. In the last 15 years, the only thing Caymanians have done is increase their debt. Think about it. And other people come here, 2 years, they made manager. 3 years, they make partner. They retire. 10 years later, $40 million. And they go live in Colorado, or they go live in Europe, or they buy a winery here and a winery there. They spend none of the money in Cayman. Yeah. They come here, and they rake in the money. Rake in the money. They abuse the Caymanians. You know, Madam Speaker, the first time that I got involved in this debate, I think was 2012. I was invited, as was all members of this Legislative Assembly, to a meeting chaired by the Honorable Attorney General. Was it 2012 or 2011? 2010, even earlier. I went to the meeting. the Attorney General handed us out a draft bill. Yeah, yeah, yeah. He was the chairman of the meeting. Every time he started to try to get a discussion on the bill, we had this guy from Maples and Calder, I think he was the managing partner at the time, Charles Jennings, who kept interrupting the Attorney General and say, that's not the right bill, that's not the right bill. I asked the Attorney General, sir, which bill do we have? The Attorney General said, this is the bill we're dealing with. He started off again, the same obnoxious person. So by that time now, my Miller blood was thick. Interrupt him again. That's not the bill. That's not the bill. This is the bill. This is the bill we have to talk about. Again, I said to the Attorney General, and if I say anything wrong, you can get him correct me, sir. Which bill are we dealing with? The Attorney General answered me, we're here to discuss this bill. The third time, he did the same thing. I look at the Attorney General and say, sir, you chairman this meeting, you can't control him, and you can't decide which bill we're going. When you find out which bill, you call me back and I walk to the meeting. On the way out, the same man called me, hand me a piece of paper with his cell number on it. I must call him. Well, I gave him one of those very kind and gentle, pleasurable, reliable Miller looks, and wadded that up, and crushed it, and put it right in the garbage can right in front of him. Because, right, exactly. And this is what these people have done to this piece of legislation ever since. The leader of the opposition hired eminently qualified Caymanians and experienced lawyers to draft a 2013 bill. Shut it down. That's the bill that had in the Code of Ethics that was mandatory, that was too strong for them, yet it controls 400,000 lawyers all over the world. Now, they bring back this, that they've written all about money, 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 and who controls the money. Madam Speaker, I cannot support this legislation. It is not about the legal profession. It is about making money. Yes, Madam Speaker, they throw a little thing there and there about standards that are mandatory, if you like it or not. You can use sections of it, but you know how to use all of it, right? To try to make us, country boys like me, believe that it's all about upgrading the profession. But I can promise you, Madam Speaker, if the government decides here and now to take licensing foreigners overseas to practice Cayman law out of this bill, not a single one of them will support it. Not a single one of them will support the legislation. And Madam Speaker, I've been told by people who've been in industry a long time that in spite of what they see, licensing foreigners to practice law abroad is not absolutely necessary for the survival of the industry. And that the potential risk of something going wrong in another jurisdiction if we don't have in place all of these extrajudicial requirements for them to meet in the territory where they're practicing it, it could be worse for the country. That is what gives me great concern. Madam Speaker, I'll vote for this bill right now if you take all that rubbish out of it and it deals with the following. What is necessary to qualify for a lawyer? Whether that's an LLB, 2 years PPC, or 18 months PPC, what it is. 18 months articles, I don't agree with that, but that's what they want. I think if you pass your professional practice course, you shouldn't have to go beg nobody to be their slave and carry around files for 18 months, because I can read a letter here by a Caymanian who said that's exactly what they made him do. And it was so bad that he had to leave the island, but he's now practicing in New York, where he's accepted, right? And you get your practicing license. But Madam Speaker, that must go for anybody. You don't care where you come from. You take that bar exam, and you do the articles. And I don't care how long you've been practicing. I support that. I support a code of conduct that is mandatory. And the penalty is, if you break one item in it, your practicing certificate is gone. One of those amendments that I talked about earlier about the progression of the legal practitioners bill, said that if you leave the island for 2 years, the Chief Justice shall remove you from the role in the court. No intent for anybody to be practicing Cayman law there. And, Madam Speaker, I talked to fellow parliamentarians from other overseas territories. They have the same concerns I have. Because some of theirs are trying to do the same thing. And they're justifying it because Cayman doing it. And Cayman is justifying it because they're doing it. Just like when me and Della want to go and see, I'd be going to ask her if she could go and see with me. And then we're going to ask Mom if I could go and see with Della. Right? So they're using these relationships and these law firms to get what they want and make us believe it is necessary. I was told quite recently that in Bermuda, the branch of a local law firm had to prove in court, how would I say, in Bermuda, a branch of a Cayman major law firm had to prove in court that those people, that the unit they were setting up in Bermuda was 100% Bermudan. Huh? They comply with the law. But it had to be 100% Bermuda. But here we are. We're scared. We're intimidated by these people. We refuse to say we put in the law, it doesn't apply. That it must have a business license and it must be 60% Caymanian owned. What's wrong with that? And Madam Speaker, my other concern about this, is we have allowed these people to come here, convince us that they can have all this stuff, destroy the tourism industry. They don't have to have papers, but we have. Caymanian must have the papers, but you can come from anywhere, but as long as you're warm blood, a beating heart, and you're prepared to wear a short skirt. You get a job as a barmaid right now. Don't even have to speak English good. Hotel that just opened, biggest one in town. Listen to me. I don't want to. No, I'm not going to tell what I know. Man walks up and asks for a red stripe beer from the bartender. Red stripe beer? What that is? We don't have those here. Cayman, This not Afghanistan or Uzbekistan or somewhere else. So he decided, well, I'll have a Heineken. Bought him a Corona. Charge him $9.50 for it. Asked him, well, where did you train as a bartender? Train as a bartender? I was trained on the job here. But I send my Northsiders down there because they don't have a bachelor's degree in bartendering. Can't get a job. Even when I send the one with a bachelor's degree in waitresses and bartenders, they won't hire her. They've done it to the construction industry. Just Sunday night, Friday night, going to Jamaica. Gentleman come and sit down by me and my wife. Asked my wife to fill out the immigration card for him. I said, why? Can't read and write, sir. Cayman on a work permit, you know. Sunday night coming back to Cayman on a work permit stamped on my passport, because I filled out the form for him. You really believe you all have an idea how difficult it is for a Caymanian who can't read and write? Isn't that the reason they tell you in these high schoolers? Because they can't read and write good enough. Not that they can't read and write, but we issuing permits wrong. Speak English, you see, so you don't do the English test. Right? Happened less than a year ago. Again, the man asked me to fill out a form. I said, well, here's the pen. Oh, sorry, he said, I can't fill it out. He was a mason. He had a permit from Mason in Cayman. I said, well, how do you handle measurements and things? He said, well, I know 1 to 10. And he said, you know, if I need to tell the man 6 inches and a little bit, I tell him 6 inches and 3 ticks, or 6 inches and 1 small tick, or 6 inches and then first big tick. He's probably a pretty good mason, I don't know. But how is it possible for somebody like that to get a job over a Caymanian? They're doing it to the legal fraternity. The next one on the list is the medical profession. They started on that already. Drive around in the shopping centers and look at the doctor's offices that don't need a business license that are set up. We got 13 Caymanians, I believe, coming back here within the next year or so with MBBS, or some of them already specialized. What are you going to do? Madam Speaker, there are too many unnecessary provisions in this bill that we don't need. Yes, we need to improve the standards for the legal profession. This does very little about that. At a very minimum, I hope the minister will accept the amendment to make the code of conduct and the best practices mandatory and not voluntary. Right? Because, Madam Speaker, just think that the drafters of the bill, who I understand are the top professionals in the legal fraternity in this country. They're the ones that are on the radio stations, build it up, would have the temerity, the gall to talk about the improving standards and the code of conduct is not mandatory. And we bring it down here, present it to the public, and defend it. Madam Speaker, you know, they all tell us that the only people that you all are hearing from is the people who can't cut the mustard, who can't be taught to cut the mustard, who have no ability to learn to cut the mustard. But I have a letter here from a partner. This one is it? That I want to read into the record. Right? Now, this is one of their own. This is a partner. The letter in today's compass from David Collins was the final hypocritical straw that propelled me to put pen to paper to express my views on the LPB. That's one of those CUFs, David Collins. Regularly given the culture in the local legal profession, I feel need to withhold my name when doing so. So I am directing my response to you, as it wouldn't be accepted on that basis by the compass. I am a Caymanian attorney. And recall that Mr. Collins had only 3 years post-qualifying experience when he was made a partner, in contrast to the regular 10-year timeline indicated on the website of the Cayman Islands Law Society. This, of course, was in response to the resignation of 4 Caymanian attorneys from the Walkers in short succession, because back in that day, the law firm still felt they had to be seen to pay at least minimal lip service to inclusion of Caymanians, and was mocked for the tokenism it clearly represented. I understand, however, that David's appointment was not unique in that respect, and that, I won't bother call that name, partner after Walkers had received a tap on the shoulder from a politician. One of the problems with the few Caymanians that have become law firm equity partners is that they seem to have forgotten the circumstances in which they did, and to convince themselves that it's because they are somewhat better than other Caymanian attorneys and thus warrant different treatment. That, to them, failing to support the interests of other Caymanians is then repaying the favor that was done to them. Madam Speaker, I will interject here. I had a big title at one of these financial firms. And I made my money in the medical field, not there. They were paying me a pittance to what I was worth. But, Madam Speaker, my basic requirement there was to find a reason not to hire a Caymanian and to deliver any work permit that they wanted from anybody, from anywhere. I finally got tired about it and said, I'm just not doing this anymore. And we parted under friendly terms. So I have experience of what they expect Caymanian HR people to do. Almost no Caymanians who qualified locally are equity partners in the larger law firms. The fact that situation exists after half a century of legal practice in the Cayman Islands evidences without need for further verification or investigation that the firms themselves have not actively sought to include Caymanians. And in the face of this, that there has been a failure to properly regulate the legal profession. The Caymanian equity partners in such firms that don't qualify locally reflect partners becoming Caymanian, not Caymanians becoming equity partners. Big difference, Madam Speaker. I think it was my colleague from East End who coined the phrase at the same meeting chaired by the Attorney General that I referred to earlier, when he told those same partners and managing partners that were being so disrespectful and disruptive, that he could tell them how many of their partners this country has made Caymanian. Can you tell me how many Caymanians you made partners? Deathly silence. The firms have made a number of Caymanians that have qualified locally partners. This, however, is largely for show. Such partners are salaried employees and may earn a tenth of what an equity partner earns. They also have no meaningful input into the management of the firm. This is significant because it is important that management reflects the composition of local society to ensure that the decision makers have a vested interest in the long-term success of the Cayman Islands, as opposed to pursuing short-term interests for personal profit. It is of further importance to have cultural and ethnic diversity in the management of such firms to avoid tendencies of groups of people to hire and promote their own image, and in the process exclude people from different backgrounds. Now, Madam Speaker, I've been at social events because my sister has some children that like to play hockey. And when these people lose a hockey game, you hear them sitting down over beer, boy, we need to bring our friend John down, he's a good hockey player. 2 weeks later, he's on the field playing for him, got work permit for him. While there should be no difference between the two professionals, the situation referenced above stands in stark contrast to the audit firms. Some in government appear to be saying that the law firms are too economically important to be regulated in any manner that conflicts with the desires of such firms. The opposite is, of course, the case. A profession that important should be closely regulated, not left to its own devices and self-interest. It should be remembered that the economic contribution made by the law firms is not altruistic. It is because in the process they make even more for their equity partners.
Member, you have 17 minutes remaining.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It is grossly misleading for the Law Society to make statements such as law firms representing 85% of lawyers in the Cayman Islands support the LPB. The Law Society is reflecting the interests of the equity partners of the law firms, not the views of the individual attorneys, and certainly not the Caymanian attorneys in such firms. The statement has no more validity than a statement that gas station represents 55% of motorists considering the price of fuel to be cheap. The fact that a professional association would engage in such spin is deeply concerning and clearly reflective of a desire to avoid addressing the substantive issues. And the law firms arranging for article clerks to be paraded about in apparent support of the LPB should be seen as the shameless exploitation that it is. By the way, Madam Speaker, I heard one of these people promoting this bill say that 14 article clerks had written every member of the Legislative Assembly. I want to say publicly, I have not received any letter from any article clerk. No, I don't know who telling. Good word, good word, good word. Any belief that the Law Society represents independent opinion is misplaced. Alistair Robinson may prefer to comment as president of the Law Society. However, the fact that the largest law firm on the island sees no need to separately make any substantive comment on the LPB makes clear that the Law Society under his direction is pursuing an agenda that mirrors that of Maples, of which he is a managing partner, not the profession as a whole, nor Caymanian attorneys in particular. The testimonials put forward by the Law Society largely comprise the few Caymanians that have managed to achieve some equity participation, and some hoping that they may be exception to the rule and get it if they toe the party line. Regretfully, this is all too reflective of a pattern whereby Caymanians who have done well for themselves are prepared to say the esteem is fair rather than support the efforts of other Caymanians to achieve like status. One could cynically say that they see doing so as their contribution to the firms. It is in fact more telling how limited the group of people the Law Society could persuade to give testimonials is. Because you remember that they had to put the same faces in the paper more than once because they couldn't get any more faces. And one of them, I believe the government had to rescue, give him a job in labor, not to do distant future by them. While I agree that the practice of Cayman law in different time zones benefits the jurisdiction as a whole, that is no excuse for breaking the existing law, and the structure set out in the LPP has the potential to go far beyond what is necessary and lead to the outsourcing of work that could and should otherwise give rise to employment in Cayman. Currently, the number of lawyers practicing Cayman law outside the Cayman Islands is estimated to be less than 20% of the number practicing law in the Cayman Islands. Yet the Law Society, for which read the big law firms, is seeking permission to have one attorney overseas for each attorney in the Cayman Islands, whether Caymanian or work permit holder. That would likely give rise to outsourcing arrangements with work being serviced not just from Asian offices for language or time zone reasons, but for lower cost jurisdictions in our time zone, such as Canada. This has already happened in other service sectors, and Maples already has a Canadian presence. The approximate current ratio of lawyers based in Cayman to lawyers based overseas, which satisfies the basic requirement without overly impacting local employment and related economic contributions, should therefore be maintained. The 1-for-1 ratio proposed in the draft LPB also fails to incentivize the recruitment of Caymanians to achieve a roughly comparable ratio to current arrangements, and at the same time incentivize the recruitment of Caymanian attorneys. One foreign practicing certificate should be allowed for each Caymanian attorney for every 4 attorneys on work permits or with PR. The fact that the current draft LPA, an entirely new document prepared under the direction of the Law Society that dispensed with numerous rounds of revision over a period of years, has been prepared to further the agenda of the large law firms, is clear from peculiar provisions such as Section 73, which states that a law firm may apply to the clerk of the court for an annual operation license on a form approved for the purpose by the clerk, accompanied by the fee prescribed by the cabinet, being a fee calculated by reference to a maximum annual fee in respect of one law firm of $400,000. The $400,000 fee applies only to the largest law firms. Why would an impartial draft provide that fees for all but the largest law firms could be increased by cabinet, but that an increase in the fee to be currently paid by the largest law firms would require amendment of the legislation? Quite interesting. Very interesting. Further, with respect to the work permit fees, Maples, for one, utilizes an inexplicable inconsistency in the work permit fee regulations, which provide that the fee for an associate attorney and an associate partner is basically the same. Associate partners are indistinguishable from salaried partners, but the work permit fee for the latter is approximately $12,000 per annum higher than for an associate partner. I always wondered why that thing that they went to court to stop us from getting from the immigration department had associate partners, salaried partners, and equity partners. I wonder what the difference was. I see the difference is $12,000 cost of a work permit, but they do the same job. And it's probably them that asks for that fee to be put in the work permit too, Why other category of employment is there under the regulations where a promoted post that involves an increase in remuneration and a title denoting increased seniority involves no material increase in work permit fees? No material increase in work permit fees. Further, associate partners are simply designated partners in correspondence with clients, there being no external distinction from equity partners who are also simply designated as partners, in respect of which the fee payable is higher again. The fact that Alistair Robertson, as president of the Law Society and global managing partner of Maples, feels confident enough to advocate for such an unbalanced piece of regulation reflects that the firms have been operating in an environment where checks and balances have been entirely absent. The law firms seem to feel that they are some way different from other business in the Cayman Islands and are not required to comply with general law, including in respect of their failure to progress Caymanians' immigration law, in which context it is particularly concerning that members of government have been supporting the LPB have conflicts of interest by virtue of close connection to law firms. The lack of representation of Caymanians who qualified locally as equity partners in the law firms after a period close to half a century, in contrast to the audit firms, makes clear that self-regulation as provided in the current draft of the LPB is entirely inappropriate. The firms have failed to advance the interests of Caymanians over the course of half a century, neglecting the terms of the immigration law in the process, and are no more likely to do so under the self-regulatory framework proposed in the LPB. Based on current composition of the legal profession, a substantial majority of the membership of the CILPA would be attorneys on work permits, and only 3 out of the 8 council members would have to qualify locally. That's quite unlike the composition of other statutory regulatory boards, particularly one specifically entrusted with protecting the interests of Caymanians. It is like having a work permit board elected and principally comprised of work permit holders. You heard what a man just said, right? What we are doing here, right, is tantamount to having, not as we do now, the work permit board made up of Caymanians, but having it made up of work permit holders. Interesting analogy. This is particularly so given the ability to direct the exercise of blocks of votes that the larger firms would have. Even attorneys in their foreign offices would get to vote. Really? That could never be true. Huh? You mean, no man, that can't be that bad. It could never be that bad. That people who work for these law firms in other countries can vote in the association in Cayman? I'm glad I didn't see that, because that would probably give me a... Anyway, which notwithstanding the stipulations as to composition would ensure the election of a council that was supportive of the interests of the large law firms.
Member, you have 7 minutes remaining.
The council would principally comprise ex officio members, as in the case in BVI, or a truly independent regulator should be constituted, as in the case with audit firms in the Cayman Islands. Thank you for taking up these issues. And Madam Speaker, as I said earlier, this is not written by a Caymanian who couldn't cut the mustard, who couldn't be taught to cut the mustard, and then liked it like mustard now. This is written by a Caymanian attorney who is a partner. Madam Speaker, I am embarrassed by the number of struggling Caymanian attorneys who have come to me with concerns about this legislation. I am shocked by the Caymanians who have made it to salaried partners who put halos around their equity partners. We had one meeting with them, and the only thing they didn't ask us to do was to kiss their hand and rings on the way out of the building. But I mean, we have young, not so young, educated, intelligent Caymanians looking at us politicians and saying, listen, I'm doing all right. I'm making good money. Don't rock the boat. Don't disturb these people. They're good for Cayman. Try and give them Cayman status to keep them here. And I looked at the young lady. I said, what happened to you? You used to be a very assertive, bright, intelligent, full of confidence individual. She has been so beaten down and beaten up in the process of getting to salaried partner that she now just goes along. I got a bright young Caymanian attorney in my constituency. I think she's 16 years PQE. Flies all over the world to represent these people and can't get not even salaried partner. Well, once they find out you support me politically, you probably won't get that. And Madam Speaker, I don't know what more to say to the government other than listen to the people that you represent. It can't be, Madam Speaker, that is only this side hearing these stories. That's impossible. It can't be that you all, and Madam Speaker, some of them complained to me while they were lawyers, about the same things. No one is supporting this legislation. Come on, man. Just do something from the people coming behind you. Don't let them have to suffer the way you suffered. And you had to give up your career to become a politician because you couldn't get the way in the law firms. And you're making them ram this down your throat.
You have 2 minutes remaining.
Madam Speaker, this is painful. This is painful. And I really hope and I pray that the light bulb goes off and that we see what we are doing to our own people. Madam Speaker, I can't support the bill. And there's no more, they're not going to be standing up here because most of them over there is on there doing whatever they want to do. They're not listening to me. They're not paying me no money. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the honorable member from the District of East End.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I take note that not enough has been said to get them out, so I might as well say the rest. Well, whether they're waiting us out or not, it doesn't change the message. Madam Speaker, I rise this evening with a very heavy heart. I know this country, and maybe Mr. Conley, the fifth elected member, and I, was the genesis of the problems this country has been going through over the last couple of weeks. Madam Speaker, I was sent here on the 8th day of November 2000 by the people of East End. On the 7th day of November 2000, I told the people of East End, I shall leave if you elect me tomorrow morning with the same enthusiasm that I will take it up with. And that is to defend you, and defend you I will. In particular and in general, the people of this country. Madam Speaker, I believe that I should put this into perspective for my people, the people of this country. I have until the 24th day of November to me to remain the representative of the people of East End in particular and the country in general. That is when the people of East End will decide whether or not I have fulfilled my promises or if I'm serving them properly. But let me tell the people of this country what has happened here and what they did as a result many years ago. Madam Speaker, our forebears, those of us who sit in here as elected representatives, understood that we were unlike our neighboring brothers and sisters, the countries who had arable lands and they utilized them for the betterment of their country. They planted sugarcane, they planted bananas, and hung their hat on that to take care of their people. We, on the other hand, did not have arable lands in sufficient quantities to feed our people by virtue of commercialization. So, our forefathers, forebearers, Jim Budden, Warren Conley, the man from West Bay, Farrington, Benson Ebanks, Sir Vassal Johnson, Anton Budden from Budden Town, name them, from Cayman Brack, Mr. Reed, the Fosters, the two brother Fosters, the Colonels, all saw the need to find some way to feed their people. Not only the people of that day, but for future generations. So in their ingenious way, they came together and developed what we call services to people outside. That has transformed into what we like to brag about today, called the financial services. Madam Speaker, in that infinite wisdom, they even saw the need to have a law school, so that we and my children, who were unborn at the time, and I dare say many of our children, some of us weren't born either. They saw the need to make provisions for the future of this country. Madam Speaker, so much so that today, this house, this very house, boasts of 8 lawyers out of 18 members. 6 haven't been qualified at that law school. The Attorney General and the Minister of Education was educated somewhere overseas. So for the purposes of this first argument, we're leaving them out, but they'll get connected a little later. Madam Speaker, so we have 6 lawyers that were homegrown, homemade bread. Today, at least one of them brags of the high quality of education, educated Caymanians that are coming out of there. Madam Speaker, those 6 lawyers in these hallowed halls, one reason or the other, at one time or the other, was connected with large law firms. You in it. Don't say no, you were in it. We'll connect you later. We'll connect the dots to you later.
Madam Speaker,
Honorable Premier.
point of order.
Please take
I
the
tried sotto voce to have the member not say what he did. I have never been connected with a large law firm. I was a partner in Charles Adams, Ritchie, and Duckworth. I served my articles there. I was there for nearly 20 years. I never served anywhere else. So the member knows that very well, and he's deliberately saying what he's saying for purposes which I'm sure will become apparent. I ask, Madam Speaker, that he withdraw that remark.
Honorable member from Easton, Honorable Premier is stating emphatically that he was not connected or attached or worked in a large law firm, and that you're cognizant of that. If that is the case, could you please withdraw that part of the statement?
Madam Speaker, he need to define large law firm then, because anything over 2-3 has got to be large.
2 or 3?
Come on now, what are you all defining as a large law firm? Nobody has put any definition on it.
Member from Easton, because you were in fact the first to use the adjective large, perhaps you can assist the House as your interpretation of large.
Madam Speaker, I just did. In my view, a large firm is anything over 2-3
So what is a small firm?
below.
And a medium firm?
Someone else have to find out. I can't.
Member, let's be reasonable, it's after 8.
Madam,
If a large is 2 and a small is below, no, I'm just asking to be reasonable. You can't have 1.5.
if we want to get into that, I am sure large law firms start about 5, medium, somewhere there, and then small is 1. So,
Can I just ask Honorable Premier how many lawyers were in the firm at the time?
Madam Speaker, we need not pursue this. The member has got to the point of ridiculousness, which everybody will be able to judge quite well what he means.
Member from Easton, please continue.
okay, thank you, ma'am. Glad that that argument is dead. Madam Speaker,
Please don't resurrect it.
it's not me, ma'am. Madam Speaker, I'm of the view that the 6 lawyers who were homegrown in this country, who currently occupy representative positions in this honorable House, at one stage or the other had problems with the law firms. Madam Speaker, that was because the foreign lawyers did not, and to this day does not, respect the education, the educated Caymanian that comes from that law school. And that's a fact. That's a fact. So, Madam Speaker, figuratively, those foreign lawyers spat in the face of the people who were qualified at that law firm, including ours here. Now, Madam Speaker, here we are, almost 40 years later, hence the creation of that law school, and the very people of this country said to the people who were educated in the law school, they don't think your education is good enough, but we do. And we are going to engage you to represent us. We are going to engage you to govern us. If they don't have any respect for you, we do. Madam Speaker, that is commendable. And Madam Speaker, here we are, the very people who figuratively spat on us. We are given it all to them. And the memories of our forefathers is being destroyed in one fell swoop. All of that work, painstakingly done to protect and enhance the very people who've given it away. Oh God. I hope they don't turn in their graves. I really hope not. Because, Madam Speaker, us, and more so the lawyers in this place, and in particular those who are homegrown, must feel a moral obligation to carry on that legacy and protect future generations. Madam Speaker, sometimes I wonder what is the charge against one who has a responsibility to protect their own and unborn and don't do it. Who renege in their responsibilities to morally protect their own. Some might say it's tantamount to treason. I don't know. I don't have an opinion on it. But certainly, Madam Speaker, with all the evidence presented by the side, as Madam Speaker, you notice they're not getting up. They want us to read the letters. They don't want to read them because they have all received them. Madam Speaker, for them to ignore the evidence that has been presented here today by people who signed their names, some who have not signed their names. For that government to ignore it, they are heartless. And that's the statement. That is actual heartlessness. Their very own Caymanians are appealing to them. And you may tell me you all are going ahead with this bill? Really? Really? There is only one reward for that. It must be a punishment at the polls on the 24th of May. And I know that there is a God above us, all-knowing, all-forgiving, but all damning too. Somebody got to pay for it. And it might be me, Madam Speaker. I got to pay for it. Well, I got to make sure you pay for it too. Especially you and that Minister for Financial Services. Y'all ain't got to darken this door again? You better be careful. You better be careful. You better be careful that you don't darken it, Mr. Premier. Yeah, well, you go on and survey.
Members, let's keep the comments to
You
the
go on and
chair.
do your survey. And since you're saying you're going to be back here, you might as well take it now then. You might as well take it now. Your turn will come. I know your turn will come in. I know it come in. But in the meantime, it's mine. Madam Speaker, he has made that prediction on more than one occasion. He has made that on more than one occasion. But I know what? If I never return here, Madam Speaker, it won't be for not defending my people. I promise you that. Like you're not like you're representing anybody properly. Madam Speaker, I think I'm worried about him. Madam Speaker, the evidence that this opposition has presented here today, it's obvious that these Caymanians are fed up. It is wrong that Caymanians are so fearful in their own country. Fearful that they will not be able to feed their families. Fearful that if they speak up, they're going to be ostracized. They're going to be blackballed in the industry. That, Madam Speaker, I say is wrong. Madam Speaker, when Caymanians cannot live in their own country, there is a problem. We have a problem. Madam Speaker, the lady Anna Gabot wrote, and because it has been read before, I just want to refer to some parts of it, Madam Speaker, where she said, I was someone who used to think of other Caymanian attorneys who raised objection as complainers or people that weren't working hard enough. That was until I experienced such issues personally. To those article clerks, that as soon as the bill was brought forward, someone called them and they all came here. It is my belief. To them, I wish them luck in their careers. But I hasten to warn them to be careful. This could happen to you. I have not received your letter, despite the papers saying that it was sent to me. I certainly would like to see what's in it. But those are the ones, Madam Speaker, that has not gone in deep enough yet. What I can say to them is that the sidewalks in Georgetown is littered with the carcasses of lawyers. That after they went through the articleship, within a short period of time, they were dismissed from the firms. They had to go and find alternative work to feed their families. These are testimonies of Caymanians who have been through it and thought it couldn't happen to them. I encourage you to be careful, very careful. Careful who you follow. Madam Speaker, let me now turn to this thing about no one knowing about this bill. about the complaints. Madam Speaker, as early as, in my time, as early as 2002, there were complaints. That's as far back as my knowledge goes with these complaints. Madam Speaker, the Hansards will bear me out. Madam Speaker, no one need say that these things were not brought to the fore a long time ago. What we can all say is that no one did anything about them. Madam Speaker, in 2002, the then Attorney General David Ballantyne brought an amendment to the bill to this honorable House, which was to increase the fees to the law firms. That's when it was done. I was a member of this honorable House. And at the time, he spoke about it. Yet, he did nothing about it. Madam Speaker, he spoke about the overseas offices, and I read from page 807 on Thursday, 19 December 2002. They also bring in the issue of attorneys and overseas officers of Cayman firms, which they say enjoy the privilege of connection with the Cayman Islands, but would not pay for that privilege. If they will excuse me saying so, they have also asked for time to pay by installation because of the conjunction of the payments in December and January. These are policy matters in my submission. They are not matters of law, and I'm not doing other than articulating the government's policy position. It will no doubt be addressed in debate, and if appropriate, they can be dealt with in a wind-up submission. I would be grateful if members could point out anything with which they disagree. I'm sure they will if they do in what I have said. I apprehend that what the bill is seeking to do is no more or no less than putting the lawyers in a similar position as the accountants. Madam Speaker, the overseas matters has been around since. In 1982, it was up for discussion. But that was before my time. Then, when I went to Cabinet in 2005, it became an issue on my watch too. And when it was circulated, I read it. And they visited Cabinet. The entourage included at least 3 from Maples, the 3rd elected member from Bodden Town, or the Minister for Financial Services, the 5th elected member from Georgetown. And I looked at the then managing partner of Maples, Jennings, and I quite nicely asked him if he knew Janet Jackson. And when he responded, he said yes. I said, well, may I remind you of her song? What have you done for me lately? Nothing has been done to give Caymanians opportunities. The Minister for Financial Services was adamant that I didn't understand, because it appears like if you're not a lawyer, you don't understand. Well, that's not true, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, he tried to explain to me that BVI and other countries were doing it. I wanted the evidence. It is yet to be delivered. Madam Speaker, we move ahead till 2010, when the now leader of the opposition had a meeting at Reliable Services, and the member from Northside went through. They explained part of it where there were about 3 different versions of the bill. And Madam Speaker, we weren't getting anywhere, and I looked at them and I said, we know how many of your partners we made Caymanians. The question is, how many Caymanians have you made partners? And I said, when somebody can answer that question, then you call me back. I haven't been called back there since. Madam Speaker, in 2011, I wrote the Bar Association chairman too, Mr. Crowley, Dale Crowley. I wrote an letter talking about how people had come to me complaining and laying out all the concerns people had. So no one must say that it hasn't been brought to the forefront. Madam Speaker, we have heard how Ian Paget Brown, I was the witness to his submissions to the court on January 2013. Nothing has been done to address the plight of Caymanians. And some of the lawyers we have here went through the same thing. It's for them to get up and give their testimony in here. Madam Speaker, all of them. Madam Speaker, this bill does not correct the ills of the last few years. It does not go near it. Madam Speaker, I have submitted 100 plus. But I understand, amendments that is, Madam Speaker, but I understand that they will fall on barren soil. I understand that. Because this Minister for Financial Services is hell-bent on putting this bill into law the way he wants it there. That's his mission. I wonder, Madam Speaker, if that was his intent in coming in here. It appears like he's on a mission to get this bill turned into law the way he wants it in. That's sad. Sad, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the motion that I submitted is a direct result of us not doing what is right in this bill. You cannot grandfather in people you know nothing of. And the minister cannot tell me that of the 200 lawyers practicing Cayman Islands law overseas, and however many of those have been doing it without a practicing certificate, he cannot tell me with any degree of confidence that they're fit and proper. Because, one, he wouldn't know. Two, they haven't been scrutinized by the courts nor the Attorney General. We don't know who they are. And as honorable as we like to think this profession is, we have heard from lawyers therein in letters, name sign, anonymous, that says they do not suggest. It plainly says there are issues of circumventing the law. So, Madam Speaker, I am justified in submitting that motion. Because it only talks about things that we had believed were going on. Now we have them confirmed by the very people who work therein. They have even taken the time to write the Chief Justice with the exact accusation. And Madam Speaker, you know what concerns me most about the treatment of Caymanians in there and how we're going to now give them a ticket through this bill to treat them even worse, is that, you know what concerns me most, Madam Speaker? Is that in some of these letters, these people, and everybody has them. So I'm not saying anything that cannot be followed. In one from early 2016, Madam Speaker, there is a clarion cry from our people. Every one of the letters talk about the lack of opportunity and the fear that they have to speak out against Caymanians. Without fail. Madam Speaker, I was so upset one that I received. It was only entitled, "To Whom It May Concern," and signed by a demoralized Cayman. And I want to read one paragraph with your permission, Madam Speaker. And this bothers me.
Please proceed.
I'm an extremely hard-working and educated Caymanian. Had I turned my back on Cayman and stayed in London to complete my training contract, today I would have had a much higher position and been treated with a lot more respect. I do not encourage young, bright Caymanians to come back if they don't have to anymore, as they will have much more opportunity elsewhere. This is truly a sad state of affairs. Someone who is fully vested in Cayman and connected to the community here is shafted for an individual that is transient, self-serving, and couldn't care less about the local community. Madam Speaker, if that does not tug at the hearts of the government, and in particular that of the Minister for Financial Services, who has taken over the Attorney General's job, then nothing will. Nothing will. Madam Speaker, when I read it, I wrote 2 words alongside it with 3 exclamation marks. I wrote, "My son." He told me the same thing, that there wasn't anything here for him. And he's not doing law. Madam Speaker, it's a sad day. Madam Speaker, I started sailing the sea when I was 18. When I was 28, I was dying to come back home. I needed to come back home. I wanted to come back home. They don't. They don't. And this bill pushes them further away from their country. Whilst the very country that they may find job in, people are practicing the same law that our forebearers put in place for them to come home to. Do we think that's right? Madam Speaker, even England is trying to protect their shores. Madam Speaker, as a matter of fact, Walkers, the minister is a former managing partner of Walkers. And Walkers just went to court in Bermuda to defend 100% Bermudan ownership. Really? Really? And that minister is proposing that there is no need for law firms in this country to be 100% ownership. Not even majority. Really? 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 You don't feel shame yourself, man? No. Madam Speaker, is that what our country has become? That might on that side will rule the day and kill the future of our country and our people? Madam Speaker, really? Really? Madam Speaker, you heard the Premier say that I ain't coming back. I will never grace these seats again. That's fine. That is fine. But woe unto the day that the Premier and the Minister for Financial Services get caught. Because their day is coming. We all have a day. Every dog has his day, and a good dog has two. And I'm entitled to at least 3 barks. Madam Speaker, no one wants to destroy the financial industry. No one wants to do that. At least not me. I understand, like democracy, our country economy stands on 3 pillars: development, tourism, financial services. I understand that, Madam Speaker. Despite what you think, because I'm not a lawyer, that I don't understand it. That's their mistake. Madam Speaker, and if either one of those pillars are removed, it will cause our economy to collapse. And it did, Madam Speaker. If we all remember in 2000, when the world economy took a dive south, we had our own difficulties. We even had to borrow money for recurring expenditure. Something we had never done before. It was always CapEx. So I understand that. Do not be fooled. But Madam Speaker, when we allow or do not allow Caymanians to share in it, do not allow Caymanian equal opportunity, think that they're stupid, and then we come here and make laws to promote that, enhance it, and say we're not ashamed? Oh, what a day of reckoning it will be. Madam Speaker, you know, in in 2000 and I think it must have been 2010 or shortly thereafter, the young UDPs and the young PPM, there was a joint meeting about this legal practitioners bill. Might have been 2012, somewhere in that region. the leader of the PPM, Mr. Alan McLaughlin, pointed out that A, the entire Legislative Assembly is in support of changes to the LPB, which creates equal opportunities for Caymanians. B, the PPM and UDP differ on many issues, but this issue is not one of them. C, that he and his administration were lobbied aggressively by a number of law firms to pass the legal practitioners bill as is, but there was no agreement within his cabinet to do so. That's true. Because, Madam Speaker, in cabinet, I said, me. I reminded my fellow cabinet members that the people of East End didn't elect me to cabinet. They asked me to join them in cabinet. The Attorney General was there. I told him it would not be up to me, nor could I stop them bringing a legal practitioner's bill here for passage. But what I could do was debate it on that side as the Minister for Works and pick up my little package and walk over here and sit where the people elected me to be. Didn't I tell her that, Tony? So he was right in that regard. D, it would appear that since the law firms were having a number of problems with their overseas practice, they now want the current administration, as they did under his administration, to pass the legal practitioners bill. Not because of some newfound moral commitment to address the concerns that Caymanian lawyers have had and continue to have. E, politicians continue to receive complaints from Caymanian lawyers about unfair treatment, unequal opportunity, discrimination, inadequate training and exposure, fear of speaking up about the issues within the firms, and the fear of losing their jobs. It's 2012. He was bitterly ashamed that the CBA has not addressed this issue as a body responsible for looking out for the best interests of Caymanian lawyers. He found the comments made by Charles Jennings as the chairman of the CILS at the opening of the Grand Court for 2011 about law firms not being required to provide articles for Caymanian lawyers quite distasteful. H, cosmetic changes to the LPB will not work. I, he could not see any of his colleagues in the LA agreeing to pass the LPB unless the issues raised by Caymanian lawyers were addressed. Finally, there is the practical issue of trust. Politicians, current and past, are saying that if after 30-odd years there has been no real, quote-unquote, Caymanian integration within the firms, and there are recurrent complaints to politicians because Caymanians fear victimization, legislators will find it impossible to convince the Caymanian community that they are in favor of Caymanian law being practiced abroad by foreign lawyers or other professionals who may not even know where the Cayman Islands are located. Madam Speaker, I understand, Madam Speaker, that we have some new people here now. But the current premier said that, not me. He said all that to your youth arm and his youth arm at the time. Have we taken a detour? Or is it because the new people who came in 2013 has a different mandate or a different responsibility or a different commitment to someone else? I don't know. I don't know. But I know what? They have spun the premier head round on his shoulder. He has detoured, gone all over the place. Really? There must be some consistency with us. Madam Speaker, I will tell you that I was adamant that no law should be practiced overseas. Madam Speaker, as of late, maybe I have softened. I will concede. But I have been convinced to support it in a limited way. I have been convinced, Madam Speaker. I'll admit that. However, being convinced don't mean they're not going to pay for it. You think the little $2,000 that are going there to charge them, or $2,300 or $2,500, that's all? Madam Speaker, I think they changed it out to $2,500 or something. Madam Speaker, Mr. Ian Paget Brown talked about 2007 when they wanted to increase from 132 to 180 lawyers overseas. That Jennings said he needed then, the industry needed. Part and parcel of it was the managing partner Walker's too, of the time. We have conservatively calculated if those lawyers were in this country on work permit, the country would have gotten $2,000 every year for them, their practicing certificate. Over a 10-year period, that's $3.6 million. If you had got an average of $25,000 per permit, that calculates to $45 million. Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, I do apologize. This document wasn't tabled, and I think we need to do that. If you can get copies for the, if you
So ordered.
can at least get one for the Speaker quickly. Madam Speaker, that's the kind of money we're talking about. They love to throw this $2 million around that they say this country benefits from this overseas practice. What about the rest? Madam Speaker, it has been calculated based on knowledge of how the law firms expect their lawyers to bill. Their salary times 3 or something of that nature. Madam Speaker, I don't know anything about it. But I know Ian Paget Brown know about it. And Samuel Jackson knows about it. And Selena Tibbetts knows about it. And Richard Barton knows about it. And Anta, what her name is? Akawumi knows about it. You expect me to pronounce that about his name? And Von Carter knows about it. And they have calculated over that 10 years, $1.8 billion gross. Madam Speaker, you think that's right? That we only get our 2 million out of it? And it's the laws that we come in here and do that they got me up till 3 o'clock in the morning studying? Really? Really? That we all have to do research for? That we have all had sleepless nights wondering when OECD and FATF and the leader of the opposition, the now Minister for Financial Services, the now Premier, traveling, trying to maneuver to stay compliant. And that's all we get out of it. Madam Speaker, these are estimates now. Not for the purposes of factual discussion. But Madam Speaker, I bet you we're close. I bet you those numbers are close.
Just so long as they're not alternate facts at this hour of the night.
Well, Madam Speaker, there are some alternate facts that they're throwing out around the place, though. Especially those people who have these full page are prominently displayed on them full page in the papers supporting this bill. They know better. That's alternate facts. They know better. They know the difficulties they had in the industry too. They need to stop lying. They need to stop lying. That's the alternate facts that I know of. Madam Speaker, another clear fact came through all these letters. And Madam Speaker, I'm not going to venture to say there were hundreds, but I'll bet you over the time I've received 10, 15 letters. No training. Now, Madam Speaker, I want to touch on that section of the law that this minister is supporting and trying to dangle a boon or a little bag of candies, play piñata with. The section about this business staff and plan. Madam Speaker, I don't know why these people think that nobody understands but them. Madam Speaker, when we went to see the CBA, Madam Speaker, the latter part of last year, the executive over at Walker's building, And no, nothing happened to us. Madam Speaker, the first thing Mr. Abraham said to us was, the bill is not perfect. So my response to that was, what is not perfect in it? Let us, if you know some part is not perfect, let us deal with that. That's the logical thing to do. Madam Speaker, he says, for instance, we put in here the provisions for the legal practice, the business staff and board. I said, I need to stop you right there. You have no authority to take over the responsibility of the government. Now, you may tell me that we as a government has failed in the provisions of the immigration law. But so has every law firm. And he wanted me to explain. I said, well, you all are the bastions of decency and ethics. You accepted a condition on your work permits and didn't fulfill it.
Remember, you have 56 minutes remaining.
Thank you, Madam. And didn't fulfill it. Remember, I said the second major complaint is the lack of training. Madam Speaker, it is fair to say that there are less Caymanians than there are work permit holders in the legal fraternity, legal profession. In most instances, when a work permit is issued for professional, managerial, they have a condition on there that they must train a Caymanian. So, Madam Speaker, I want to know, and I ask them, what evidence can you provide to me which would suggest that putting that provision in this bill, that you'll do it? You have not been good corporate citizens, therefore you cannot provide evidence that you have been doing it. And if you had been doing it, one, you wouldn't get the complaints that we're getting. Two, you wouldn't have worried about putting it in here. The Attorney General likes to say there's no need for duplication. Now, Madam Speaker, I totally agree. We have failed. We have failed. The government has failed in its responsibility to enforce that section of the law. Whether that's by virtue of omission or commission, I don't know. I believe it's the lack of human resources to have a proper task force in place to do audits on those provisions. But the lawyers have done nothing to fulfill their legal obligation, and now they want to take it away from government. What are we doing? Is this dangling a carrot in front of us, in front of the Caymanian people to say, see, we're going to make them, we're going to hold them responsible for training? And they're obligated to do it by law. Madam Speaker, they have been obligated by law a long time. They didn't do it. And Madam Speaker, they can't get up and say they haven't been obligated by law. Section 44 of the Immigration Law 2015 revision reads, the Work Permit Board, the Business Staffing Board, or the Chief Immigration Officer, as the case may be, in considering an application under Section 42. It goes on and it lists some. In relation to the prospective employer, that must consider now. C, in the case of an application in respect of a professional, managerial, or skilled occupation, the board or the chief immigration officer, as the case may be, is satisfied to the extent to which he has established adequate training or scholarship programs for Caymanians. And D, in the case of a worker who has a 10-year term limit which took effect prior to the commencement of the Immigration Amendment Number 2 Law 2013, the extent to which the employer has contributed to the National Training Initiative. Now, what I do now, Madam Speaker, is I call on the Minister for Education to get up and tell us how much the law firms have contributed to the National Training Initiative. That's it. I'm not saying they haven't, Madam Speaker. I'm saying I want to know. Madam Speaker, it is in law. It is in law. This law is Law 34 of 2003, wherein we repeal the previous immigration law. It has been in place. There is no evidence to suggest that they're going to do it now by putting it in this new bill. And that, for instance, Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, really, on a real need be shame on himself, 73 says in the new bill, in the bill, Madam Speaker, this part applies to a law firm who, A, that wishes to apply for a work permit for a person to work in the law firm in the islands, or B, that wishes to apply for a practicing certificate for an attorney at law who practices or is to practice Cayman Islands law in another jurisdiction. Every law firm to which this part applies shall submit to the Business Staffing Board a business staffing plan that complies with Schedule 3 of the Immigration Regulation 2013 revision. This part and any rules made by the council. By council, By council, This section applies 75. this section applies to a law firm. E, if a law firm, A applies for a work permit for a person to work in a law firm in the islands, or B applies for a practicing certificate for an attorney at law who practices or is to practice Cayman Island law in another jurisdiction. The managers of the law firm shall ensure E, that at the time the application is made, the law firm has a business staffing plan that complies with this part. Say what? B, that the grant of any work permit or practicing certificate as a result of the application is in accordance with the business staffing plan as in effect at that time. 3, despite the fact that the failure to comply with subsection 2 may constitute a professional misconduct by managers of the law firm and may result in a complaint being made under section 95, any such failure shall also make the law firm liable to the penalties prescribed under the Immigration Law 2015 revision. Oh, I did. Little or nothing. The purpose of a business staffing plan that complies with 76, the purpose of a business staffing plan that complies with this part is to ensure that when recruiting staff at law firms accept a commitment to provide opportunities to Caymanians. Wow. 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 76.2. A business staffing plan of a law firm shall make reasonable provisions to give Caymanians access to the legal profession, including training and development and subsequent equitable progression within the law firm. Really? Madam Speaker, I'd done some highlighting long time ago on it. Madam Speaker, 3, a business staffing plan of a law firm shall contain details of how the law firm intends to comply with provisions of Part 2 of Schedule 2. 4, the business staffing plan shall also contain a provision that if an attorney who is not a Caymanian is proposed as a partner in a law firm but is denied a work permit to practice in that position, the law firm will not, for a period of 2 years from the date of the application for the work permit was denied, apply for a practicing certificate that would allow the attorney to practice Cayman Islands law as a partner in an affiliate of the law firm. Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, honestly, Madam Speaker, it's, there is no need for us to duplicate efforts. That's why we need to have them subject to the trade and business license law. But we're exempting that. The people who can afford it, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it was in the day when Maples and Campbell and those came here, and you had people like Mr. Warren and Stanton, Miss Annie, they were appointed then, or something of that nature. Yeah, I understand that. Madam Speaker, there are Caymanian lawyers now. There is no need for only one Caymanian to be a partner. Madam Speaker, I am even prepared to allow a period of time for them to become compliant. And thus we're proposing that in the amendments. Why are we pushing all that we have ever worked so hard for further and further and further away from the possibility of Caymanians' ownership? I wonder if we have ever thought of what we're doing. We will never get it back. And Madam Speaker, this thing about don't believe in affirmative action. Madam Speaker, honestly, trust me, if you don't do it, they ain't got to do it. Madam Speaker, in the 60s in America, when that concept was introduced, it was a bad thing. Today, it's a way of life. You need to start someplace. No, Madam Speaker, I agree with the Premier and I agree with the Minister of Financial Services. I don't want to put Caymanians in place just because they're Caymanians. But, Madam Speaker, no one is going to tell me that we only have the propensity to be accountants. Cannot tell me that. Look, Madam Speaker, the Premier, the Minister for Services, the Minister for the other one, the 4 lawyers lined up right there. He may tell me all them dumb. No. The Premier was lucky when he went with Mr. Adams. He had an affinity towards the Premier, and he pushed him and pushed him and pushed him until he could push him no more. He went and gave it up. But mine, there were 2 of them out there that tried to kill him too. They eventually killed him. Not kill him, but push him out because of his service to his people. And today, they're in big partners. You wouldn't make me do what I want to do. Madam Speaker, that's how they do it. Every opportunity they got to pull the rug from under the Premier's feet. Take away 9% one time, little 2%, and the little 3%. Before he knew it, his heart was full and his hands were empty. He knows. That gentleman knows what it is to get the rug pulled from under his feet. Believe me, I know he knows. I know, Madam Speaker, the Premier knows what it is to get his legs just chopped right off, and the prospects of his family surviving on the profession that he gained here in this country look dimmer and dimmer every way because of that fella Fair and Finlay. They won't call names. He said, I'll come back, so I might as well call their names now. Madam Speaker, this is what has happened here. The only one that got a little success out of it was the Minister for Financial Services. And trust me, I know, Madam Speaker, he may tell us otherwise, but somewhere deep in there, They got a little piece out of him like Pac-Man too. Him. You didn't get anything. That member for finance never got anything. What he got was heartaches and hands empty out of where he was. Same thing, Madam Speaker. Nevertheless, he was an economist before that and all them things. But he's dumb. He's supposed to be dumb. Do not support this man in what he's doing. It doesn't matter whether you win or lose at the next election. I promise you, you can't get another job in Cayman. So you might as well do it now and help your people. For the minister education, she's the same way. World College, York, all kinds of colleges, all kinds of universities. Then did law. You're nothing. Madam Speaker, they know what it is. Maybe the Minister of Education not as much because she wasn't in it that long. But our Minister of Financial Services, Finance knows it. The Minister for the Premier knows it. And Madam Speaker, last but by no means the least, the Deputy Governor knows about it. That's the other lawyer that nobody's paying attention to. He knows about it too. And finally, that Attorney General. If you think he does not know about it, he knows. Madam Speaker, you know what they did him? You recall earlier I spoke of 2005, 2009 when we were in cabinet. He proposed a code of ethics that was from the Caribbean, and they rejected it. They rejected it. That same gentleman there, the Attorney General, they slapped him in the face with it. They have absolute control. And they're giving them, I don't know if absolute and total are not the same thing, but they're giving them over the top now control over this industry. Don't do that. And please don't do it. What are you talking about? Sit down. You better try to get up and defend your people. That's what you better do. Madam Speaker, the opportunities, Madam Speaker, we will be held responsible for taking the opportunity, the option in this country for unborn children to have. It's an option. Whether I do law or I do engineering. Madam Speaker, since being a member here, Madam Speaker, to be exact, in 2012, Madam Speaker, the member from Town, Dwayne Seymour, moved the motion and Captain Eugene seconded it. On be it resolved that the government take all necessary steps to provide an interim program in the Legislative Assembly that can be used as credit towards the articles of clerkship requirements for qualifications as an attorney in the Cayman Islands. Madam Speaker, even then, the Premier supported these firms given Caymanian opportunities. Madam Speaker, one noteworthy section of his debate at that time appears on Wednesday, 11 April 2012, wherein he says, so, and I quote, Madam Speaker, so I do hope that this information, which I received just last week and earlier this week, about this move afoot now to do away with articles is not true. That somebody has gotten that wrong from the sources that they are talking to. Because that, Madam Speaker, is something that I will personally fight foot, tooth, and nail as long as I can draw breath. Noteworthy, I have no personal dog in the fight anymore. I've done my time and gone all the way through. My wife, after 10 years of long suffering and hard battling and struggling also to get articles, was admitted 2 weeks ago. But because of those struggles and because of being intimately involved in the system for the last 29 years, and because that is where I qualified, I have a great deal of concern, admiration, love, respect, and gratitude for the opportunities that law school has afforded me, and now my wife, and a whole range of other Caymanians. That's 2012, the Premier said that. Madam Speaker, in my contribution, I said, Madam Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition said, and I'm quoting, Madam Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition said that he does not have a dog in the fight. Well, I do, and I have plenty of dogs. But those dogs are not born yet. Future generations. Future generations in this country, and those of now too. Many of them out there suffering as a result of the travesty that their older counterparts have brought upon them. This is the only place, the Cayman Islands. When I retire, I'm going to write my memoirs, and the title of it is going to be Only in the Cayman Islands. Madam Speaker, we cannot be afraid to speak. Madam Speaker, I suspect that the government will not allow that motion to see the light of day. I suspect that. They're going to drag this out and ensure that it doesn't get there. That's what I suspect. Madam Speaker, that motion is timely. It is grounded in truth. It is necessary, and it needs to be done. That,
Remember, you're getting awful close to anticipating, so please do not speak any further to the motion which has not come on the floor, but continue your debate.
Madam Speaker, I guess if I get an opportunity, I'll get 2 bites at the cookie. But I know the Premier not gonna give me 2 bites at the cookie, so I got to trim my sail as close as I can.
There's no more sail to be trimmed. You've already entered into the area of the standing order to anticipate. So please use your remaining minutes to make it relevant to your debate.
Madam Speaker, how much time you say I have?
Your time concludes at 7 minutes past 10. I am going by the clock on the wall.
Maybe one of these days we need to put a digital one here because of all the interventions by them. That should stop it, and then I get more time. Madam Speaker, my colleagues have passed me yet another letter. Madam Speaker, I guess I have been instructed to read this letter. And this is from another unsigned, another Caymanian. Madam Speaker, this is a letter written to Minister Archer and Mr. Conley. That Mr. Conley happens to be the member from Georgetown. And it reads, I refer to Mr. Conley's Facebook posting where he welcomes input, anonymously if requested, on the draft legal practitioner's bill. I have not seen a copy of it, but have heard through the grapevine that certain persons in private practice in the large law firms are concerned about the proposal to change the PQ requirement for expat lawyers from 3 to 5 years. And I refer to you to a copy of a letter sent to Minister Patton, which I have copied and attached. I do wish to remain anonymous, and therefore shall not sign my name to this, but I am Caymanian and have been practicing for more than a decade in the Cayman Islands and have been in the legal community for over 20 years. I, for one, cannot support the attached letter. I am not at the beginning of my career. I no longer have any dreams that if I work hard enough and try hard enough and do whatever I'm asked, that I will eventually make it a partnership in private practice. The law firms have had 20 years of my life to prove to me that they are even slightly interested in supporting Caymanians, whether born here or children of the soil. They have failed so thoroughly and so completely that I regret becoming a lawyer. I should have been an accountant or auditor, as those firms have shown leadership in protecting Caymanians while appropriately promoting expats. The crux, I believe, is that for too long the legal practitioner law has been massaged by those law firms who have put profits over country. Those law firms have made a mockery of the Cayman legal practice, where a Caymanian partner is an anomaly to be fawned over in amazement and rather than an everyday occurrence. I believe that it will not matter if the PQE for expat changes to 5 years or 10 years or is reduced to 1 year. The law firms have shown repeatedly that they will screw over Caymanians time and again. Maples has told senior Caymanian associates who have been trained by Maples' partner and are billing at the top of the firm ranks that they are somehow lack to ever je ne sais quoi, to ever advance the partnership while their expat colleagues billing less are feted and given six-figure bonuses. Appleby, oddly enough, has had to repeatedly make mid-level associates redundant. Almost always Caymanian associates whose positions are confidentially filled by mid-level expats a few months after the redundancies. Conyers makes high-level Caymanian associates redundant to make room for expat partners who have never practiced Cayman law and need to be trained for those high-level associates. Walkers fails to take Caymanians on marketing trips and then refuses partnerships on the basis that the associates haven't done enough marketing. Let's not forget GFC in 2008, when Caymanians barely held on to their jobs while many major firms made huge efforts to retain expat lawyers in those positions held by those Caymanians, and then made them redundant or otherwise managed them out. As you well know, all of the major law firms use Caymanians for their own ends, fail to train us appropriately. If they do train, then there are some others make up reasons out of our control that means that we cannot move up, only magically discovered when we're 5 to 8 years PQE. Of course, when there is no way to fix it, and generally treat us as an obligation. This is a huge contrast to other Commonwealth countries where the expat attorneys originate. Although we are part of the UK, a Caymanian trained attorney cannot work in the UK without undergoing additional studies and passing rigorous exams. In Canada, most foreign attorneys must go back to university and study for a second LLB and then re-art. This includes UK lawyers. In Australia, foreign attorneys must requalify and take rigorous examinations as well. In these jurisdictions, many have a desperate need for qualified attorneys to serve their increasing population. The legislature has accepted that protecting the local practice of law for the citizens of their country is an important and valuable goal. Precisely what I said earlier. In Cayman, not only are the lawyers under-regulated, but the practice of law internationally is akin to the Wild West. Wow. The state of affairs has been actively supported by the law firms, taking more jobs away from Caymanians. It wasn't until recently that Caymanians attorneys were given the opportunity to visit these offices. Caymanian attorneys were segregated to small matters of little importance in Cayman. In that respect, any changes that were made to the practice of law in Cayman must apply to the practice of law outside of Cayman. Otherwise, the law firms will take all of their staff and their profits permanently offshore. I do not believe that minor amendments to the PQA requirements will come close to protecting Cayman interests. Any changes will be fought aggressively by the law firms, as they have no desire to change the cash cow that they've been milking to the detriment of these islands and our people. I believe that the following changes should be considered to protect Caymanians from the law firms. Note that by Caymanians, I include those persons who have status or have residency with the right to work by virtue of being married to a Caymanian. You're also unduly limited. One, a Caymanian lawyer should be made redundant in a law firm. No Caymanian lawyer should be made redundant in a law firm unless all of the law work permit holders have been made redundant first. This protects Caymanians in the time of the downturn. Work permit holders should not be retained at the expense of Caymanian careers. This should include article clerks as well. No new work permits or practicing certificates should be approved until the number of Caymanians in the firm are back to the pre-redundancy levels. All Caymanians should receive salary and benefits within 10% of the highest paid expat in that division with the same PQE. This avoids the mischief that concerns Mrs. Wright. The law firms will use 5-year PQE as a ruse to artificially lower Caymanian salaries. In-house counsel and professional support lawyers should be for Caymanians only. Recently, there was an ad for a professional support lawyer for a Cayman firm requiring 5-year PQE of UK law. This is absurd, as the lawyer would know nothing of Cayman legal precedents and would have to be trained the same way as a Cayman lawyer new to the role would be. All Caymanians that have been made redundant or refused the position should be able to write to the Work Permit Board setting out the circumstances of their redundancy or refusal. Work permits for partners, whether salary or equity, should not be used where the firm, at the time of the application for the work permit, has appointed to the partnership salary or equity, respectively, a minimum of 33% of partners who were Caymanians at the time of or before their appointment to partnership. This avoids firms using partnerships as a way to guarantee PR for expat employees by avoiding rollover. Law firms practicing Cayman Islands law should abide by the above, regardless of their location, and failure to do so should result in no practicing certificates being issued to that firm until they are in compliance. Yes, I understand that these are a dream wish list, but I believe that the law firms have done much too little and have destroyed the careers of too many Caymanians without repercussions. Short of incapability, Caymanian attorneys should be protected above expat lawyers at all levels and for all reasons. It is high time that the Legislative Assembly protect the very Caymanians that are expected to vote for you, rather than putting it into the hands of the very firms that have us shown time and time again that they are simply uninterested in helping Caymanians be great lawyers. Too many expats treat being a Caymanian lawyer as a right for expat and a privilege for Caymanians. It is high time that the status quo changes for the good of the country and of the people. Thank you for your time. Madam Speaker, that letter was only repeating what I have been saying all night. It is time. It is time for us to take stock. It is time. Madam Speaker, you know what is funny about the accountants? And I ain't saying this to float the second elected member from Georgetown on any cloud or anything. Madam Speaker, recently the accountants wanted to change some section of they were doing amendments to it. And the minister was increasing some charges in their law as well. Dan Scott and Sherry Ebanks called and wanted to meet with us on this draft bill. We went to their offices, but four of us. And then you did separately. They went through it with us, Madam Speaker. Well, they had sent it earlier, and we had all read it, and we went through it. There were some concerns that I had. So the meeting was not concluded. We set another meeting, and they were going back to the minister with our concerns. They came back, and it still wasn't the way we thought it should be, or another section or something. They went away, and they came back. And we went to luncheon meeting with them, and we went over it. And Madam Speaker, when that bill came here, it was passed without objection. This was recently. But Madam Speaker, no one wants to do that. Recently, they tried using Cayman finance. You see that little Alistair Robertson? Anyway. I got to tell him that I got to be around here a long time. And I am going to be planted right now, stand up in East End. You got to watch him out. Madam Speaker, and they wanted to have a meeting. I was not adverse to a meeting. I would never object to a meeting. However, I wanted an agenda. I never go into anything unless I know what I'm going to talk about. Tell me what I'm talking about. But that little fresh fella, man. That was no close. That was deliberate. Madam Speaker, would only take cut now, then do that. Madam Speaker, I don't have it. I don't find it right now. But he sent the member from Georgetown a one-line thing. After we asked him, our lawyers asked him, set him the terms. But that's the kind of behavior they have. Alistair Robertson. I don't even know him. Thank God. His father-in-law came to me and asked me why giving his son-in-law a hard time. I said, I don't know his son-in-law. He said, Alistair. I said, who it is? He said, Alistair Robinson. I said, that your son-in-law? Can't be, man. You would make him marry your daughter? I don't want to know him. Madam Speaker, that's wrong. The kind of way they treat you with disdain, disrespect. But you know what I noticed, Madam Speaker? All those lawyers who have ever been or is managing partners treat others the same way. I say no more. Madam Speaker, I was going to Jamaica last year before last. A gentleman comes aboard. I was in business class. A gentleman comes aboard and I'm in the aisle seat. And he said he was by the window. So I said, okay. Got up, I helped him with his bags. When the plane was taxiing out, I said to the gentleman, I said, do you live in Cayman, sir? He said, yes, sir. I said, oh. He said, I've been there for 20 years. I said, 20 years? And you mean tell me I don't know you? He said, I know you. I said, oh. He said, yeah, I listen to you on radio every Tuesday morning. I said, you do? So I said, what's your name? He said, Lumsden. I says, you? You're not the one from Maples, though. He said, yes. I said, oh, yeah? I only got 1 hour with you, but your ears got ring and that. And ring they did. And he asked me to give him an opportunity to clean up the past. I suspect they were the ills of the past.
You have 7 minutes remaining.
Madams, we got to tell this story. I said, well, I got to tell you what, we both going to Jamaica. You remember that brown soap that your mother used to wash clothes with? You ain't got that much space on this plane. Bring back enough clean up Maples and Calder. Can't wash it off, boy. They continue with the same behavior they have always done. Not giving Cayman an opportunity. Madam Speaker, this is no originating idea from me. The letters are here to prove it. I hope, but I haven't seen him since. But one day, with the help of God, I will. I hope you remember what he said to me. Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, when they hear us complain, we complain just for complaint's sake. That's not true. Or for politics want to get reelected. Madam Speaker, I know what? There's a great equalizer. It's called a pencil in this business called politics. This is our responsibility to defend our people. Really? Currently, there's a 3 years PQE required to come here if you're coming on work permit. In 2007, I believe we proposed 7, wasn't it? 7 or 5, it was, Madam Speaker. These people has allowed that minister to propose 4 after January 2019. You know what they're going to do, Madam Speaker? You're going to fill the firm up with 3-year ones now. Between now and then. Why do you need it to be staggered and delayed? Tell me now, Madam Speaker. There must be something sinister about it. This is the most incestuous set of people I've ever met. And I must settle for it. Boil on it, sit down, or do it on a smug look. Now you in it. You're the first one. Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, I know a lot of the technical aspect of this bill has not been debated. I tried touching on some of them, but in the what? No, tell them jump here. What do you tell them do? No, you heard why you say you try and deflect it. You think I don't know you already? You've been the worst one out of us in here all along. From time we come in here. Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it is sad that we have reached this point where,
You have 2 minutes remaining.
yeah, but I got punish you for that 2 minutes. You gotta get that. Madam Speaker, it's sad that we have reached this point where we're not listening to our people. I implore the government to withdraw this thing, this bill, and allow the next administration to do it, whether it's them or not. This is the 11th hour. I hope it's not that they're doing it so it can be done and people become licensed and then human rights start hitting in that you can't reverse it. I hope that's not the ultimate intent, because that ain't gonna happen. Someone gonna have to repeal much of this law. I cannot say the full thing, but much of it needs to be will have to be repealed. I don't know what the intent is, Madam Speaker. I don't know. That's left to them to tell the public when the time comes. Let them be the judge of what they will tell the public, and let the public be the judge of what their future holds for them. Thank you.
Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the Honorable Premier.
No, Madam Speaker, I beg to move the adjournment of this Honorable House until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning.
The question is that the Honorable House be adjourned until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. All those in favor, please say aye. Against, no. The ayes have it. The Honorable House now stand adjourned until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning.